Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to talk through how to create a responsive mobile navigation. So whether we're on desktop or mobile, we can still access those link tags. When we're on desktop, we're just going to go in a straight line across the top of the page with a logo to our left. And when we're on mobile, the links will drop down in a row and we can hide and show them with a hamburger menu that changes to a cross. Now, this mobile menus are kind of the last thing I learned to not use Bootstrap for when I started doing web development. So Bootstrap is great because it gives you a lot of things you can quickly and easily use, but also it can hinder you because you rely on it too much. So what I ended up doing was just using Bootstrap in a lot of cases for a mobile navigation menu, and it's not too difficult to do. There's a bit of JavaScript involved. However, the JavaScript is not the problem. It's kind of realizing what you need to control on the CSS with the JavaScript, which is going to be the main thing that you kind of need to take away from this video. So anyway, guys, I'm going to jump straight into it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and yeah, let's do this. Okay guys, so here we are in our template. It's our starter theme. I've linked the video where we create this at the top and I'll put it in the description. And you can just get it off GitHub as well, so you don't have to go through linking style, JavaScript, and we're just adding normalize just to make all our paddings, margins, etc. The same, so we don't have to deal with any resetting of the browser. Now this is what we're making today. Simple header, logo one side, and this nav on the right. Then when we shrink it, so I'm just going to inspect and reduce the size. So when we get down to a sort of tablet mobile size, you can see we go to a hamburger. And when we click on the hamburger, you can see that it goes up and down. We get a little cross as well, so we know it's been clicked. And when we go back to that size, it's all fine again, it's all on desktop. So that is what we're creating. And we're going to start from a blank canvas. And we're going to start first of all by creating a little grey bar. So that's going to be a header tag. So just create a header like this. And inside this header actually, this is a container. So it's just holding sort of middle ground here. So it doesn't go all the way to the left, but as we shrink, it'll shrink in with us. So that just has a container in it, and it's just a div. And we're using Emmet, so we can say dot container tab, and that will create a div with a class of container. So there we go. So the next thing to do is we need the logo to the left and the nav stuff to the right. So let's create a div which will house our logo, H2 logo. So H2, and we're just going to say logo. And the other thing we need is the nav, which is just in a nav tag. So if you use Emmet, which is just an extension, you can get them in here in VS Code, or whichever editor you are using, you'll have extensions for Emmet available. It's a must, you must have Emmet. So if you just type in nav and hit tab, it will create the whole tag for us. And inside the nav, we have UL, unordered list. Hit tab again. And inside here, we want to do li asterisk 4 greater than a. And this sounds a little bit weird, but as you can see here, it's coming up Emmet abbreviation. What that means is we want to create 4 times list elements, list items, and inside of those, let's have anchor tags. So if I tab, you can see what that has done. So I'm just going to say this wants to be a hash, hash, tab, and we can say home, tab, hash. Let's do about, tab, hash, hash. Tab again, I think we said forum, and then we're going to say contact. I can't remember what the other one said. That's close enough for us right now. So if we save this, have a little look what's going on. Okay, it doesn't exactly look like we've got here. And this is because we haven't actually styled it and told it to kind of do the containers it needs to do and things like that. So let's do that now. So let's do a header element in our CSS, and let's just have a background color on it. That's all we really need from this. So background color, and that's going to be hash EA. Just a nice gray color. And then what we need to do next is let's set up the container first. So dot container. So we're going to style the container. It's going to be a flex element. Display flex. And that's so we can throw the logo left and the rest of it right. So how we do that is we say justify content space between. You see it's there in the drop down. I just click on that, space between. So it's saying if there's elements, just put space in between them. And there's only 2. So that should throw one left and one right. So I'm going to save and refresh. You can see that's what it's done. This is not in the kind of orientation we need, but logo's left, this is right. So let's have a look at get this nav to kind of orientate the way we want to do it. And the way you do that is, at the moment, each list item is a block element. So it's saying, yo, the rest of this line's mine, get off. And we want it to say, oh, I can be in line. I'm still a block element. Yeah, I know, that's my default. But actually, people can sit alongside me. So other listed items can sit alongside me. So the way you do that is say display inline block hyphen inline hyphen block. If I give that save, you see what happens there. And now they're alongside each other. So let's centralize and have a maximum width container, because this is too far left and too far right for my liking. Let's jump up to this container. We're going to use rems today. Max width of 60 rem. So a rem is a relative unit of measurement, where normally you could do something like 1200 pixels. A rem is by default on most browsers 16 pixels. So one rem is 16 pixels, but you can also change the value of that. So I could set one rem to be 12 pixels. So it's relative to the base pixel, basically. But as default, it's 16, generally speaking. So max width is 60 rem. Give that a refresh. Okay, so now we want it to center. Now it is taking that width, but we want it to center. So we're going to say margin on the top and bottom is 0, and the left and right is going to be automatic. So they'll be identical, which should pull it in central. Yeah. Now, the logo is pretty central here, but this isn't. And that's because actually this container is the height of it is being set by the padding on this. So if I inspect, you can see the padding, or the margin even, is actually all the way to the top and bottom of that container. If I remove the margin, I can just do it in here. Margin 0, you can see it collapses. So what we want to do is, we want to, in our container where we said justify content, we want to set the vertical as well, because justify content is the spacing horizontally. So align items, align items is the vertical one. So align items center is what we want, and that should bring it center. Cool. So now we're getting kind of close. Let's do some let's color in those links, make them black because they're black on the other one. So let's say in the list items anchor tag, so LIA, let's do a font color of #000, so that is black, and a text decoration of none. So it's going to remove the underline as well. Okay. Looking good, getting closer. We kind of want to space them out a little bit, I guess. So let's do that on the list item element. We do that with padding. So we want 0 on the top and bottom. We don't want to have anything there. And 1.25, let's try, rem on the left and right. Yeah, we're looking pretty good. Cool. So I'm going to actually set the font because I haven't set the font here. So I'm going to do that in the body. So I'm going to go right at the top, just do a body tag, make it look a little bit nicer. We'll say font family, and we're going to go with let's go with the top one, Arial Helvetica Sans Serif. There we go. Yeah, cool. So that's pretty much it now on desktop. But as I shrink, you can see that it touches the sides, right? And we kind of want to give a little bit of padding to the left and right of the container itself. So let's put a padding. We don't want any at the top and bottom. Let's just do 1 rem, 16 pixels is cool. Give that a refresh, and if we do it again, it doesn't touch the sides. Cool. So let's start looking at mobile, I guess. So what we need to do is we need to make this fall down underneath and stack on top of each other. So let me go down here. I'm going to start doing the media query for mobile. And a media query starts with @media and all, and then you want to tell it at what point do you want this media query to start working. And we want to say max width when the width is a maximum of 720 pixels. Okay. Oops, 720. Okay. Right, so everything under 720 will now be controlled in here if we give it something to control. So first thing we want to do is we want to flip that container. So right now the container is in a row, but we don't want that. So we want to say the container should be a column instead. So flex direction is going to be column. Then if we inspect, and we just need to reduce this down to 720 pixels. There you go. You can see how now it's kind of dropped down. It's looking a bit weird because the logo needs to be over here on the left. So let's make this whole thing go left. So we do that by saying align the items. So similar to what we had above in the container, we want to now align the items to the start. So we say flex start, flex hyphen start. Okay, so logo is looking exactly what it should be doing. This thing isn't. And the reason this thing isn't is because actually we want the list items to go downwards now, right? So we told them to be in line, but actually we want to reverse that now. So let's reverse that. Let's tell it the list items go underneath the container. So the li list items want to be display block now. Right? So we're getting closer. Let's centralize everything. So we need to centralize the text. So text hyphen center. Text align center. And we also want to do, let's see what that gives us. So you can see it's actually centralized the elements. But what's going on is if we inspect, we can see that the nav element, you see, isn't the full width. The container is, that's looking good, but the nav needs to be full width for that text align center to kind of work. So let's jump back to our CSS and let's say, right, so what we need to do is we'll go right underneath the container in the media query, and we're going to say the nav needs to be a width of 100% here, right? Because we need to fill the whole width for this to take effect. So you see it's almost center. It's out because some of the padding is out. because we obviously had some padding here, and now actually we want to remove the left and right padding, but we can give it some at the top and the bottom instead. So let's do that. So let's say on the list element, the list item, it's padding 1.5, let's say, rem, and top and bottom. Then left and right we want 0. Give that a save. Yep, we're looking closer now. So with that being said, let's make the size of the font as well. So we want it to be bigger on mobile. So list item anchor tags are going to be a font size of 1.4 rem. Looking pretty good. What's going on here with the, you can see that they're slightly out, right? And that's because the UL, the unordered list, you can see that right there it has padding. And that's default padding. That's coming from the user agent style sheet. So we're actually going to remove that entirely. We don't need to do it in the mobile. We can do it entirely. So let's do it in our main bit of the CS. So above list item, let's do a UL. Let's say padding. It's going to be 0. And that should now throw this into the center. Okay. So actually that's looking kind of okay. Desktop is good. Mobile is good, but we have no way of opening and closing it. So let's add this button. Let's add this mobile button to click through. So what we're going to do is inside our container, we're going to do it inside, because it's not going to be inside the nav, because we're going to have a lot of things, we're going to have a lot of things happen to our nav element for heights and stuff like that. So we don't want to be in there. So we can be inside the same div that the logo is in. And what we're going to say is we're going to have it's going to be called Nav Toggle. So it's going to have a class. So we can do a dot nav -toggle. It's also going to have an ID. So we're going to grab it in the JavaScript with ID. We style with classes. We do JavaScript with IDs. So nav toggle with a capital T for the JavaScript, then hit tab. And there you go. So now we have an element that's going to hold our nav toggle, our nav menu button. And I've got a couple of links here for some images, for some SVGs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them in the description, so you can just copy them out of the description, so it's nice and easy. So what I'm going to do is create an image tag. And if I say img, then hit tab, Emmet will fix it. Otherwise, image source equals, and then I'm going to copy the link. I'm going to give you guys the link in the description. So I'm just going to copy this. It's an SVG. So it's going to be really sharp and really clear. And let's call this hamburger menu. Hamburger menu, because it's an alt tag. Right, save that. Let's have a little look at what this one is. So if I refresh, you can see it's a little hamburger menu. Now, it's totally in the wrong place. It needs to be top right. And probably the nicest, easiest way to do this is to actually position absolute, because we know it's always going to be the top right corner. It doesn't need to be within anything. We can set it ourselves. So we're going to go into our CSS and we're going to style this. We're going to say the nav toggle. So go underneath here. Dot nav toggle. And we could have done this within our media queries as well. It doesn't matter too much. But we're going to say position this absolutely. And what we want, where we want to position it is we want to say it needs to be at the top. It's going to be 1.5 rem from the top. So, what's that, about 20 pixels, something like that. And from the right hand side of the page, right, let's try 1 rem, see what that says, what that looks like. Save that and I give that a go. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. I think that's where it should be if we're down here. That looks good. So, if we go back to desktop, oh, it's still there. So, what we kind of need to do is actually we want to say we don't want it visible. So we can say display none And this is in our main CSS. It's not within our media query. So we're saying display none. Then what we can do in our media query is say, so we're going to go right at the bottom of it after the anchor tags. We're going to say .nav toggle, and that's going to be display block. So what this should give us is, here we go. On desktop, we are not going to see it. And as soon as we go to 720, we're going to see it, which is exactly what we want. Now, as a default, we kind of don't want this to be open. So, but when we click on this, we want it to animate to open. So the best way of doing that is to animate on the height. So if we say that the nav height, this navigation container has a 0 height, in the media queries, we'll say height is going to be 0. That will then pull this gray area up, but watch. It has done that, but it's left behind its contents. And that's because they're overflowing out of the container. So we can set the nav to say, look, if I have contents and they don't want to follow my height, basically if they're overflowing me, just hide them. So that's overflow hidden, right? If we refresh that, looking good. Desktop is great. Mobile is good, but we don't have clicking functionality yet. So let's start adding that clicking functionality, right? Let's go to our main.js and let's start talking about what we need. So we need this nav toggle. So let's make a variable. We're using const nav toggle. We're just going to grab that from our document. So documents.query selector, and we're going to grab it, and that has an ID of nav toggle, because remember we gave it a class and an ID. And we grab stuff off ID if it's just one item. So what do we want to now do? So we've got a nav toggle, so we can say, okay, nav toggle dot add event listener. We say, right, when this is clicked, so when the nav toggle, the item that's nav toggle is clicked, so we say add event listener, the first argument is click. When it's clicked, we're going to do an arrow function in here. So pair of brackets, leave them empty. Then equals greater than to make an arrow, curly brackets. So that's an arrow function. So we're saying when this is clicked, do something. And just to show you that we have it, we're going to say alert clicked. Save that. Give it a refresh. When I click it, there you go, clicked. So we now know that this is set up correctly and we can click on things. So what do we want to happen? Well, we want the height of that nav to go back to where it was. In fact, we want it to go all the way to the bottom of the page, right? So what we can do for that is we could set a class that's called open. And when we click on this, we can add the open class to that nav, because then it looks good in the HTML as well, so you can see it's open. So this is how we do that. We're just going to go back to our style. We can go under nav toggle. Just create a class called .open. This is going to be height 100 VH, 100 of the vertical height, which is 100% of the height of the window. So back to our JavaScript, and now let's say that nav we want to add a class of open to, but we don't have the nav yet. So let's grab that in. So do a const, and we're going to say that nav is just going to be called nav equals, let's grab it from the DOM, so document dot query selector, And let's grab that nav element. So we can just grab it with nav. We don't need to give it an ID because there's only one nav on the page. Now what we can say is nav. So grab that nav and dot. So when it's clicked, grab the nav and add the open class to it. So we say nav dot class list. So go into the class list, and we want to add and remove it. So we want it to be open and close. So we want to toggle the class. We don't want to just add it because we need to remove it as well sometimes. So let's toggle, dot toggle. Oh God, I can't even. Right, dot toggle open. So what that's going to say is when I'm clicked, just toggle that open class on the nav. So let's give that a little try. So refreshed, click in, there we go. If we look into the inspector, you can see the nav has an open class. When I click again, it's removed. Added, removed. Okay, looking good. But as you can see, it's kind of, we are getting what we want, but it's not very animated. So let's animate that. And the way we do that is go back to our style. And we can say for the nav itself, I'm going to go all the way into the media query. And we want to just have a transition on this. So transition. And we want to set a 250 millisecond transition for the height property. And we want it to ease in and out. So it'll just do a nice, it'll start fast and slow down, then the opposite, isn't it? So it's just a easing method. So if I just give that a refresh now and try that, you can see, there you go. Got a nice little transition. So now what we need to do, it's almost perfect, right? But we don't have our cross. We want a cross to appear. So how do we do that? Well, we can say in our JavaScript, we can hide and show elements. So what we could do is we could add the cross into the HTML as well. So if I go back here, I'm going to copy this image that we had of our hamburger, just paste it underneath. And the second image, if you want to just go towards the end where it says hamburger, hamburger.svg, change that to close. And we'll change hamburger menu to close hamburger. Now it's going to start looking a little weird, right? Because it's going to add two of them. And this is not ideal. So what we want to do is we probably want to hide the close icon, the cross, at the beginning. So we only have one. So let's do that with a class. So let's do a class equals hidden. Then we're going to make this hidden class. So go back to our CSS. Underneath the dot open, we'll do a dot hidden. And we're going to say display none. Display none. Right. And these are what we'd call utility classes. So if I do that, yep, looking great. The cross is not there if I click on this, but we don't want to hide them. So we need to switch them around, right? So we could do this on both elements at the same time. So let's go into our index. I want to give them the same class. So this is class equals nav icon, let's call it. And also this wants a nav icon before the hidden. So nav icon space hidden. So now they're sharing the same class. We can target them in the JavaScript together. So let's do that. So let's grab const nav icon equals document dot query selector all, because there's more than one. Query select all. Grab all the elements that have a class, so dot class of nav icon. So grab all the icon elements. So this has now two because we have two on the page. Now let's go into our click function and let's grab that nav icon. We want to loop through each one of those and do something. So we're going to use for each. So dot for each. So for each item, then we're going to add icon. So for each icon, arrow function. So just draw an arrow, some curly brackets. So this is a very simple for each. Nav icon dot for each of the nav icons. So for each icon, so nav icon is the collection, it's the array. It's not quite an array, but you can see it as an array. So for each icon, then we can start calling it icon because it's the individual one now. So for each icon, so loop through the first icon, we'll say, have a look in the class list. And dot toggle that hidden class, right? So what it's doing is only one's got hidden at the beginning, so it's going to remove the hidden from one and add it to the next. So it's going to flip that hidden tag, right? That hidden class each time it happens. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to refresh. I'm going to jump back and let's see what happens. You see now? Now we have the cross happening. And you think, great, job done. But this is where it gets the edge cases. I want to teach you the edge cases. So if I open this and I widen this to the desktop, it's gone a little funky, right? So we actually need to do a few things that basically says, well, when you're, we need to check on the size. If the window size has been changed. If this was a default, right, and we're just on a mobile, that's fine. It looks perfect. If we're on a desktop, it looks fine. But if I'm on a mobile and I'm just stretching the screen, I'm just in my browser, and I've left it open, I'm pulling from open back to desktop, that's the problem. If the menu was closed, like it is now, so I can close it and do that, it's fine. It's when the menu is open and I go back to desktop is the problem. So what we need to do is, I'm just going to tie this up a little bit, bring this in line. So what we need to do is we need to work with the window and add an event listener that listens out for the resize of the window. So we call it by saying window dot add event listener, very similar to what we did up here with the click. So I'm just going to click add event listener. And the event is called Resize. And this is something in JavaScript, in the browser, sorry. This isn't just some name you make up. So this is Resize. So it's listening out for a resize event. I'm going to do another arrow function. So brackets, arrow, curly brackets. And now basically what we're saying is, what do you want to do when the window is resized, when it detects that there's a resize? So let's console.log resize. So you can actually see that this is working. So let's go to my inspector. Now if I resize this window, you'll see in the console, go to console. You see? Each time I move it, it's going up. It's just adding another number. So we now know that this resize works. So we want it to basically say, well, if you've gone below 720 pixels, we want to reset stuff to normal, actually. This is what we want to do. So we want to remove the open class from the nav, because that's what's causing all the issues. It's the nav is left open, which is giving it 100 vertical height still. So let's say nav dot class list dot remove remove that open class. Oops, remove that open class. Right. Now that's all good and well. Like if I inspect this again, I'll give it a refresh. That's all good and well, if I go down to 720 pixels, get my nav, and I open it, if I resize now, it's going to close again, and then the cross is still there. So actually we want it only to do this at 720 pixels or greater. We want the reset to happen only on desktop. Let's jump into our editor. So on resize, if the document .body .client width, so we're basically getting the width of our window, right? This is the width of the body of our client. So if this is greater than 720 pixels, so if this is desktop, we're saying, so 720. So if this is desktop, we want you to remove that open. So we're just going to move this inside here. We want you to remove the open class, so the nav will go back to normal. So a little look, refresh. So I'm open, I can move it now. There we go. It's not messing with the height now. If I go full width, then back, it's closed. Because I'm removing the open from the nav. But now it's messed up our cross, right? So what we want to do is, we then want to say, like, remove the open class. We also want to reset the nav icons to what they were at the beginning. So that would be nav icon. Again, we want to do a for each. We want to say each icon, arrow function, curly brackets, or you can copy the one from up here, don't forget. So we want to say nav icon for each icon. Let's first remove the hidden class. Let's remove the hidden class from every one of them. Icon.class list. In fact, let's add it to them. So class list dot add, just so we don't get two elements showing up briefly. So let's add a class of hidden to each item, right? Then we just want to say the one that is the hamburger itself, we want to then show it again. So right now, if I do this, I refresh, we can be open. I can shrink it, it's fine. If I go back to desktop, it's open, and this is the cross. Go back to desktop, come back again, totally disappeared, because now they both have, if I inspect, they both have hidden classes. Go in here, div, nav toggle inside here, these both now have a hidden. Because we looped through the elements and gave them hidden. Now we just want to get the hamburger back, right? So we can say, let's do that by giving our open one, which is the hamburger one, top one here, give that its own ID equal to hamburger. Let's say it's called hamburger, right? So now in our JavaScript, we can say, we can grab that hamburger, so const hamburger equals document, you've seen this before, dot query selector, and we just want to grab hash hamburger. So it's going to look on the page for the hamburger. So look on the page for the hamburger. And then we want to say, well, that hamburger, after you've done all this stuff, you've hidden them, we want to just grab that hamburger and dot class list, and we just want to remove that hidden. Just because then it'll reset, it'll do them both to hidden. Then we can just remove the hidden from the one we need. I'm just going to add a few semicolons I've missed. It's not that important in JavaScript, but it looks nicer. It looks like you've done a proper job. So save that, refresh this. I can open, I can close. If I have it open and I go to desktop and I come back, there you go. It's back to its initial state. It's a cross when we leave to desktop mode, and when we return, it's a hamburger again. Okay guys, so there you go. I hope you've enjoyed it. I think some of this stuff with the client width is very interesting inside those edge cases that you don't think about, because if you're resizing, not many people resize the browser. You either looking at it on desktop or you're on mobile. So I hope you've enjoyed that, guys. I think this is one of those things, like I said earlier in the intro, that it's the last thing I was leaving to Bootstrap. I didn't know how to do it properly. This is one of my favorite ways. There is some ways that we can animate the little icon, the SVG icon, but this video would have been massively too long if we'd have done that. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it, guys. Please comment, like, share, do all those things. I appreciate that immensely. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.